We went out probably, we being the Enterprise and her surrounding defense force, and we must have went 1,200 miles northwest of Pearl Harbor, and there we met the other part of the task force, which was the Hornet. And we were amazed, and of course, I wasn't as amazed as the old hands on the ship, but there was the 16 B-25 bombers that were on the way to Tokyo. And we made that run, and I want to tell you, it was a drizzly, cold run, and as history will tell you, we had to launch, that is they, over on the Hornet, had to launch Doolittle's bombers about a day and a half early because there was Japanese picket boats. They were masked as fishermen, but they had long-wave radios, short-wave radios on them. And they had sent the signal. The Hornet picked up the signal. They said there's a battle force coming towards Japan. So they sent, I believe it was 2 of us destroyers, and I think it was either the Northampton or the Nashville. And we went out and sank every one of the picket boats. And we was hoping that they wouldn't be sending more information. And then when we came back, they were already warming up the planes, and they took off to go bomb Tokyo. So we made that run, and we came back, and we reprovisioned ship. We hadn't used any ammunition because we'd done no battling. We hadn't been attacked by planes or anything. So we came back, and we thought they were going to go down and open up the Solomon Islands, where the Japanese were building a nice airfield. And as we were doing that, why the word came, we came out and was heading down to the Solomons, and the word came no. And they had managed to break down that the island was going to be attacked was Midway. Now I want to point out here, if Midway would have fallen, the United States would have had to evacuate the Hawaiian Islands, and we would have ended up losing World War II. I only point that out because the importance of the Battle of Midway. The Battle of Midway, which we won, was the turning point of World War II. Why is that? Now think about this. When we went into Midway, the Japanese had 10 late model ships and had been practicing to go to war for 6 years. We had a few ships. They had 10 for every one we had. Every one we had was pretty much outmoded and carrying battle damage. We went up with our little 28 ships, and they had 88. And we whipped the Japanese and put them fleeing back to Japan, sank 4 of their aircraft carriers, with only us suffering the loss of the Yorktown and the Hammond. That's all we lost. And the Battle of Midway was my first real introduction to a real naval battle. Well, during the Battle of Midway, we were a part of the Enterprise. The Enterprise was Task Force 16, and the Hornet over there was Task Force 17. And we were pretty much with the Enterprise all the time. Our duty was to ward off planes coming in to trying to torpedo the Enterprise. And we hadn't really suffered much of attack because they were all going after the Yorktown and the Hornet. And when the Yorktown got hit, she was hit first by 2 dive bombers. Japanese dive bombers got her. They followed our planes back and then attacked the Yorktown, and the Yorktown was carrying battle damage. Her forward part of her flight deck was mostly plywood. In other words, it was jury-rigged. Now, the big tugboats out of Pearl Harbor had only taken the civilian naval workers back to Pearl Harbor about 2 days before. That's how close it was. The Yorktown was hit, and somebody higher up in command said the Ellet over to pick survivors out of the water. We probably were one of the first destroyers that had a crack swim team. There was 8 of us that were swimmers, and we had a little line that went on the back of your Mae West, and they would go upwind from where the survivors were in the water. And then when they give the command, we'd all spring out and go out, and we'd latch on to guys, and they'd pull us both back in real slow. So we went over, and we were pulling survivors in off of the Yorktown. And I remember a man up in our crow's nest. We still had a crow's nest that early in the war. He spotted torpedo wakes coming at the Yorktown. So he sounded the alarm, and I remember I came out to get my breath. Thank God some of us were out of the water. And the first two torpedoes, the first one went through the Hammond, who was taking off survivors of the Yorktown, and into the keel of the Yorktown, and it broke her back. She started settling faster. The second torpedo went exactly into the Hammond and blew her up, her and all the survivors. And so we have more survivors in the water. Well, I remember we were getting ready to go back in to try to get some more of these men out of the oil and the grime from the Yorktown. And the man said, "Here comes a third torpedo," and it was headed for us. And so our captain was knowledgeable enough about tactics that he, what they called, combed the wake of the torpedo. And that torpedo missed us something like 10 or 12 feet. The men down in the magazines that service the ammunition down in the magazine, they said they heard that torpedo go and disappear. She missed us that far.